Hey, I'm Ryan from ExperienceGear.net. Today we're looking at the Sensah CRX Pro, which is a drivetrain that you can get direct from China from AliExpress. There is a swath of options out there from various vendors. AliExpress can be really quite the quagmire or gong show when you're looking for stuff. We kind of went down that rabbit hole and looked at all the options and went with this thing. What we were able to find was a option that ranged from $110 up to $175, with the primary change in price being the cassette specifically, with steel options on the low end and aluminum machined options on the high end. We opted to go with machined one just because we wanted to see how the finish would actually work out on the aluminum, but also wanted to see how the ramps would work for kind of shifting up and down the range. So we've got a cassette in this package, a chain, obviously, derailleur, and a trigger shifter. Kind of starting from front to back, trigger shifter, you can actually shift up 3 different gears into an easier gear at once just by kind of pushing your thumb forward. And then we've got a dual release trigger, meaning you can use your thumb or a trigger shifter to move into a harder gear as you're riding. The caveat with the trigger shifter on the front moving into a harder gear is that if you are using your thumb, there's not a ton of clearance. So if you've got bigger hands or you run really wide grips or thick grips, probably not going to be the best option for that. So that's probably the biggest caveat with this whole system thus far. Moving to the back, the cassette that we got, which is the most expensive offering, weighs somewhere between, I think it's like right around 365 grams, which is quite impressive. If you look at similar offerings from companies like E13 in their 11-speed kind of wide range cassettes, you're actually going to be weighing a little bit more, which is quite surprising. And then kind of moving to the derailleur, we've got a derailleur that actually has a clutch and an adjustability on what that spring tension is for the clutch, with the glaring caveat being that even in the strongest setting, it's still pretty weak. We were actually able to measure right around 20 newtons of force to pull it. Whereas if you look at other offerings from, say, SRAM, you're looking at something that's closer to 30. What does all that mean when you get onto the trail? It means that we've gotten about 20,000 feet of climbing and about 100 miles on this system. And overall, we've been really impressed. We have not yet dropped any chains. We have not yet had any major shifting issues due to the cassette. And even over that distance, the cassette has very, very little wear on the actual finish of the cassette, which I found very surprising. We've had a particularly harsh fall here in the Pacific Northwest, where we went from super dry and dusty to super, super cold and wet. And I expected there to be some significant sign of that. And I have yet to actually see any major wear marks on the cassette itself. Overall, shifts have been super clean and precise. And even more importantly is the usable range. With the box setup that we had, which was a 9-speed with a similar range, it was super challenging to actually get the right gear for the cadence you needed for the terrain. With this setup, I have not experienced the same thing. Being able to find the right gear to grind up stuff has been very easy, and steps between gears, if you're actually accelerating out of a corner, is again very straightforward, no issues whatsoever. So we actually walked away from this, or we are walking away from this review quite positively. Going into this, we had very low expectations, and we've been quite surprised. With the only really major issue being, two major issues: the trigger shifter clearance. So if you've got bigger hands, you probably should not get this system. And then the quagmire that is buying direct from China. We can't speak for any quality control issues. We have not had any issues, and expected that over the distance that we've used this, distance and duration that we've used this, any major issues would have kind of poked their heads up. But we have not seen that. However, buying stuff off of AliExpress is super risky sometimes, and those are the only 2 kind of major reservations I would have with a system like this. Overall, we've been very, very impressed. If you are kind of on the market for a new drivetrain, are a little bit budget restricted, and want to try something else that's a little bit different, and you got small hands, this thing it's pretty good. So we've got a full, still a short review, not a full review, but we've got a review up on our website at ExperienceGear.net, as well as a bunch of other really cool stuff that we've been working on. So we would encourage people that are watching this review to check that out as well. And I think that's it for today. Thanks.